Hey guys, it's Carolyn, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about money, fractional CFO, and today my guest is Luke Boyenger. Luke Boyenger is an American certified public accountant and a business strategist. He currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Cruzumi CFO and Advisory, a firm that provides fractional CFO and advisory services to companies in the construction industry. Good afternoon, Luke. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Before we dive into all the good information you give us, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, a little bit of a non-traditional approach, I think you could say. Definitely not the normal CPA route. I didn't even start my accounting degree until I was 24. So I grew up working in family businesses. My grandpa owned a construction company. My dad owned a machine shop. So I grew up very blue collar, hands on, getting dirty, working in a ditch full of water at 3 a.m., fixing a water main for the city type of work.
Gotcha.
Never in a million years thought I'd be behind a computer doing financial work for a living. But learned a lot of things from working for my grandpa and working with my dad. Unfortunately about how not to run a business on the financial side of the house. And I wanted to be an entrepreneur myself someday, but I wanted to master the financial side of business before going and doing it for myself, which is kind of how I ended up going back to school when I was 24, getting my accounting degree, going to work for Ernst & Young, getting my CPA license, spending 6 years doing financial statement audits for Fortune 500 companies and just kind of launching down this path of trying to become a financial expert and learning how to run businesses the right way to maximize the profitability and the investment of time you're going to put into it. I wanted to get as much out of it as I could.
So what were some of the mistakes that you saw now looking back when you were involved with your father and your grandfather's company?
Yeah. I mean, I can give you 7 of them. I literally wrote a book about it, right?
Yes, that's my next question. You're the author of 7 financial mistakes that put commercial construction companies out of business.
Yeah.
Tell us what those mistakes are.
Yeah. From a construction perspective, one of the big ones is underestimating the importance of accurate job costing. On the smaller end of the construction business scale, I see a lot of companies just not job costing at all. Just looking at total overall business results and trying to manage that way. And it's really hard to drive profitability if you don't understand individual job level performance. To larger companies that are doing the individual job level costing, but they're not really doing it right. There's errors, there's problems in the accounting that are flowing through to the job costing that's keeping them from being able to see an accurate picture of how profitable their jobs really are. So they're running a business based on a incorrectly calculated job profitability, and it's not getting them to the result they're looking for because the accounting's just not right.
All right. So the first one is job costing, not doing it at all or doing it incorrectly.
Right.
And so when somebody's trying to job cost, then how would they get it right? Or how would they know that they have it wrong, or how should they fix it?
Yeah, great question. And I think that's where most construction business owners make the biggest mistake is they don't have anybody in the business with the skill set to understand whether or not it's being done correctly. They've put people in roles, but if you're a construction business owner, you're probably not an expert at assessing the talent and skill set of an accounting team, right?
Yeah,
It's,
absolutely.
you're not supposed to know that, frankly. So you just need to have somebody in the business who can assess whether or not you have the right people in place. Because if you don't have the right people in place, you've set yourself up to fail from the beginning. So whether you bring in an outside consultant to just evaluate your team and tell you, do I have the right people? Or do I have gaps either in seats or skill sets that I need to go fill? Just simply doing that would fix a lot of the problem.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because I mean, obviously construction owners start the business because they're good at the thing they do.
Yeah.
Not necessarily good at the financial side because they don't know what they don't know.
100%.
I have definitely lived that in my entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the first one. What is the second mistake?
Not budgeting proactively to avoid overspending. So there's a big difference between budgeting and tracking expenses. A lot of business owners track their expenses. They look at them every month and see, where did all my money go, to make sure they're informed about how they're spending money. That's wildly different from telling your money where it needs to go before it's ever gone out the door, and holding yourself accountable to a plan and a budget that was specifically and deliberately designed to achieve strategic goals in the company. So you're not just willy-nilly spending money and knee-jerk reaction, new shiny thing walks to the door and you have to have it. You hold yourself accountable to a budget to drive the financial success that you're aiming for as a business owner.
So like budgeting, do you do that monthly, do that yearly? What is the best approach?
I think a budget should be set on an annual basis and monitored on a monthly basis. Doesn't mean you can't tweak it throughout the year as things come up and you want to make adjustments to deliberately pursue something different that you didn't know was going to come available to you 6 months ago when you did your budget.
Yeah.
But you should set a budget for the year in advance, monitor it monthly, and update it and tweak it as necessary as you go through the year.
Gotcha. All right. So budgeting, that was number 2. What's number 3?
Managing, or failing, I should say, to manage project scope effectively.
That's a good one. How do you do that?
Contractually. Get rid of the handshake deals and we're good buddies. We don't need to have a contract in place or that type of thing. Or we're just having your contract super vague. The unwillingness of construction companies to invest honestly a fairly insignificant amount of money in a really solid, legitimate contract that they can use for their jobs is shocking to me. You can take care of so much profitability leak just by having a really solid contract in place. And it only costs a couple $1,000s to have a solid attorney like yourself draft a legitimate contract. And it's going to pay for itself a million times over. And the fact that a lot of companies don't do that kind of blows my mind.
I agree. And especially so like residential contractors is kind of easier because they're telling their client what the scope is. And on the commercial side, it's a little bit harder because, you get your bid documents, you put a bid out there, but then, like I was telling my clients, when the contract comes back, that scope is never the same. And generally, they're not hiring you to do the bid. They're hiring you to do the scope of the work that's in the contract that is at least a little, if not hugely different than your bid. So make sure you check the scope. That's bitten so many contractors that I've dealt with. And they're like, well, I didn't have that in my bid. I'm like, but you signed a contract. It was in the scope and your bid is no longer part of it.
Right.
So yeah, that's one of my big things too, especially on the commercial side. All right. So scope is number 3. What's number 4?
Not using a forecast to plan for the future.
Ooh.
And just kind of assuming that what's always happened is going to continue to happen, or we've grown 10% every year, so we're probably going to continue to grow 10% every year. Well, that's fine when it works, but it falls apart pretty quickly when it doesn't. And if you're in business long enough, it will eventually not work. And having an actual solid forecast in place makes a huge difference in moving towards the ability to run your business strategically, instead of relying on gut feelings and knee-jerk reactions and hoping you have enough cash in the bank.
Yeah. So how does forecasting, something like that, work with a construction company when you're not sure what's going to come through the door?
Yeah. So I think about forecasting like this. It's not a crystal ball, and it's not meant to tell us exactly what's going to happen over the next 12 months. It is a scenario planning tool. So we're going to go out and we're going to forecast a 10% increase in revenue over the next 12 months. And we're going to budget based off that and see where we land at the end of the year based on that projection. But then we're going to go run it again with a 10% reduction in revenue and say, well, let's assume that the worst case happens and instead of growing 10%, we shrink 10%. Now what happens from a cash flow perspective and a profitability perspective? Are we going to have a conversation about laying some people off? Like, realistically, what is the range of possibilities from 10% shrinkage to 10% growth? And how do we put a plan in place so that we're prepared and we're ready to act and respond regardless of which one of those happens?
Interesting. Okay, all right. So that was number 4, forecasting. Right. All right. So what's number 5?
Failing to stay on top of cash flow.
Oh, yes. So tell me the secrets on that one.
Cash flow is the lifeblood of the business. When you're out of cash, you're out of business. And you have to protect it and you have to plan proactively for it. And I just don't see a lot of construction companies do that. I see a lot of them just kind of trusting their gut, going with the flow, hoping they have enough, robbing Peter to pay Paul, just not really planning for cash effectively. So there are strategies you can implement to make that significantly more effective, such as a cash flow forecast, kind of this part B of forecasting. I think a part A of forecasting is revenue forecasting. What do we think we're going to do in revenue? Part B then is cash flow forecasting. What kind of cash flow for our business is that revenue going to turn into over the next 12 months? And using that to make strategic decisions about how you deploy cash in the business. If we need to go out and add a couple service trucks to the business, are we going to finance them or are we going to pay cash for them? It's really hard to make decisions like that if you don't have a cash flow forecast. And so a lot of times they'll say, well, we've got $5 million in the bank. Let's just go pay cash for these trucks. Oh crap, we forgot. We have $4.5 million of expenses to pay next month. Now we're screwed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So doing that, having a cash management policy in place, in terms of defining from a policy perspective how you're going to deploy cash in the business. At what point do you pay yourself more? At what point do you distribute excess earnings versus building up cash and equity in the business? These things should be determined ahead of time by a policy that you manage to, all for the purpose of achieving the goals that you've set for the business.
I agree. Should a company, especially a construction company, have a plan for like saving money?
Yeah, 100%.
How much, like if they have like a bottom line positive, how much of that number should they put in savings every month? Or do you have anything like that, or what's your suggestion, I guess? Because if you don't have a formula for it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it depends. And that conclusion that you draw is informed by the stage that the business is in and the goals of the owner.
Sure.
If you don't have a 6-month cash reserve in your business, the answer is all of it. Everything that you don't need to run the business to survive, you got to pay yourself enough to survive. Everything else needs to go in savings until you have a 6-month cash reserve, period. After that, it becomes a question of, well, what do you want to achieve? What are your goals? Because if you're telling me you want to double the size of your business, but you also want to take all the profit home, I'm going to tell you, hey, you have to pick between the two. You can't do both. And we can find a balance. We can do a little of both and maybe grow slower if you want to be able to take more money home and take your family on a nice vacation or something. That's all fine. But our goals have to inform what we do with the profit and cash in the business.
All right, so cash flow is number 5. What's number 6?
Not utilizing technology to improve efficiency.
How common is, before we get into that, how common is that in the construction companies you deal with?
Extremely common. It's my grandpa started this business 80 years ago, and he made good money doing everything on paper. So by golly, why should I change? It's like, well, your grandpa started the business in a completely different era than we're in now. He probably didn't use technology because it wasn't available. And you can't just keep doing what you've always done just because it worked 40 years ago.
Yeah.
There are ways to become more efficient, to keep up with times, to be more competitive, to be more profitable simply by effectively deploying technology in the business.
What kind of difference have you seen technology make in like your clients? I'm very curious.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones for us, for what we're looking at, is looking at accounting technology. Are they trying to run a $50 million business on a small business platform like QuickBooks? Mm-hmm. If so, they're trying to run on outdated technology that doesn't have the robust capabilities that a $50 million business really needs to be able to run efficiently and effectively. So it's looking at other more modern, more robust, more up-to-date, more capable accounting platform solutions that are out there in the marketplace that allow us to operate more effectively, more efficiently, more profitably by delivering high level, meaningful, accurate data and insights to the business owners so they can make the decisions they need to make to continue to grow the company.
Well, yeah, and there's so many softwares out there now. I mean, we partner with JobTread that has the accounting function, the job costing, and it's all there in one place. And for me as a lawyer representing you in a lawsuit, if you have everything in one place and I don't have to go through banker boxes to find what
Yeah.
I need, it's going to save you money in the long run. It's going to give you a more effective case. I mean, it's just a better way to run a system.
Yeah, and I like that approach of getting as much out of one thing as you can. I feel like a lot of construction business owners hear this theme of, oh, I need to modernize. I need to deploy technology. I need software. And so they just start going out and reaching and grabbing all these different tools and applications and platforms and saying, okay, look at me, I'm modernizing. Look at all this crap I've implemented. It's like, yeah, but none of it works together. It's so disjointed. You're paying for a million things when you could just go get one thing that would do like 90% of it.
Exactly. Oh, I agree. And there's a lot of options out there. And I know there's some hesitation, like, because this has worked, it's always worked. It's a big change and getting everybody over, but it really pays off so much. The transparency of job costing and be able to see it in real time.
Yeah.
All right. So what is the seventh mistake?
The seventh is my favorite, which is failing to seek professional financial advice.
This kind of brings me to my next question too, is like, what is a fractional CFO? What does that mean?
Yeah. So historically speaking, chief financial officer is a role in a company that's been around since the beginning of time, seems like, right? But in the old model of full-time CFO, your business had to get to a point where you both needed and could afford to pay $250,000, $300,000 a year for a full-time CFO so that you could bring the CFO skill set into your business, which meant that if you were a sub, $10, $15 million in revenue company, you didn't get a CFO.
Yeah.
You just didn't. You couldn't afford it. It didn't make sense. So that journey of 0 to 15 million in revenue, you had to figure out the finance side of the house largely just on your own.
Yeah.
With little to no help except for your annual butt chewing from your tax accountant telling you all the crap that you did wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got a year's worth of data that's all in the wrong place.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So what fractional CFO has done is said, look, you don't need to hire a full-time CFO. Even if you're a $20 million company, you probably still don't have 40 hours a week worth of true CFO work that needs to be done. So there's so many companies out there, they're doing 20 million in revenue, they can afford a full-time CFO, so they have a full-time CFO and they have 5 hours a week worth of actual CFO work that needs to be done. Well, what do you do with a $300,000 a year employee that only has 5 hours a week worth of work to do?
Yeah.
You give them a bunch of other low-level crap to do to fill up their schedule because you're going to pay them that much, they're darn well going to work.
Yeah, they're going to do something. Yeah, absolutely.
So now you've got someone making $300,000 a year doing jobs in your company and tasks in your company that you could easily pay someone $50,000, $60,000 a year to do. So fractional CFO says, look, you only have 5 hours a week worth of CFO work to do. Just hire a fractional to do it for literally a fraction of the price of a full-time CFO. Then hire a less expensive $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 employee to do all the daily processing type of tasks in the business. And all in, you're getting a CFO skill set. You're still getting the daily tasks done that you needed to. And you're getting it all done for about half the cost of a full-time CFO.
So what does that look like? Say I have a $5 million construction company. I have an in-house person that's putting into QuickBooks. I've been in business probably like 3 or 4 years, maybe a little longer. And I come to you and I know that I need help, but I don't know what I need. How do you start? What does that look like?
Yeah, so there's a discovery process we go through to kind of figure out where are you in business right now? What do you have in place from a revenue serving capacity perspective? What does your growth trajectory look like? And what does your administrative base in the company look like? Do you have in-house bookkeeping or are you outsourcing it? Do you have more of an accountant level, maybe like an accounting manager type of role in the company that's driving the accounting accuracy and can produce actual real financial statements and stuff like that. Like, where are you in the maturity of building an accounting and finance function within your business? And then based on that, we start assessing where are the gaps and is there opportunity for us to come in and be able to help and provide value? Because if we don't think we can provide value, we won't take you on as a client. We're not in the business of taking people's money. We're in the business of delivering value. And I like to say we start where accounting stops. So we don't do bookkeeping. We don't do accounting. We're not going to produce financial statements for you. We help clients take financial data and turn it into budgets, forecasts, projections that can be used as strategic decision-making tools and help the owner of the business build a financial roadmap to get to where they want to go.
So after you do the initial assessment, kind of see where they are, do they meet with you once a month? What does that look like for most companies?
Yeah, the way we're structured is we basically are like a CFO in a box type of solution where we deliver a fixed scope of work to our clients every single month,
Gotcha.
which is what we call the CFO report. Okay. So they are effectively paying to get a CFO report for us every month and a 1-hour strategy session where we go over the report with them, we break it down, we go through everything in detail, we say this is exactly how the business has performed over the last 12 months. Based on that, here's how we're projecting the business is going to perform over the next 12 months. We're doing a monthly budget versus actual review. We said we were going to spend this, but this is what we actually spent. Why? We driving some of that accountability, asking the tough questions, looking for cost-saving opportunities. We're really driving the progress in profitability and cash flow by having those strategic conversations with our clients every month.
All right. So tell me about some of your favorite client success stories.
Yeah. Really good one. I signed a client. They had about $4.5 million of cash in the bank, all sitting in a Chase operating account. They needed about $500,000 a month to run their business. So kind of forced a conversation with them and their bank where we said, hey, you got to give these guys a better option than just having all this cash sitting in an operating account doing nothing for the business. And lo and behold, Chase all of a sudden had this miraculously awesome account that paid 4.5% interest that they could go put $3-4 million in. And by making one banking change, we added 6 figures of interest income to the business.
Wow. So you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was it. Because they thought, well, we don't want to put our cash somewhere where it's harder to get access to because we're afraid of running out of cash. We just want to leave it there so we always have it. It's like, well, when we put a budget and a forecast and projections in place, and all of a sudden they had a crystal clear line of sight into how much cash they really needed over the next 12 months. Now, all of a sudden, they felt really comfortable taking $3 million of that and sticking it in an account that's going to earn interest because they knew they weren't going to need it in the next 12 months. But when you don't have that clarity in that line of sight, you just leave that money sitting there doing nothing because you don't know what's going to happen.
Gotcha. How about, I know one of my big topics, especially on cash flow, accounts receivable. Mm-hmm. What do you say about collection strategies?
That one's tough in construction because there's such a built up expectation that it takes a long time to collect. And everyone just kind of seems to accept that for some reason of, we've got a $500,000 invoice that's 90 days past due. Why aren't you collecting that? Well, it's construction industry and, people just pay slow sometimes. Bull crap. I don't give a crap if they want to pay you slow. You go pick up the phone and you call and you say, where's my money?
No, yeah. And like lien rights exist in all 50 states. Bond claims, you have a right. I mean, these systems were put in place to make sure that you get paid. So make sure you get paid. If you don't use them, they're not going to work. But anyways.
100%. And the last thing you want to do is teach all of your customers that you won't call if they're late.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, so we have a collection subscriptions. And so we have clients, in the first, getting their clients used to it in the first 90 days can be a little challenging. But once you're the squeaky wheel, you move to the top of the line.
Yeah.
My husband and I have a material supply company, and we've been doing the same strategy for nearly 20 years. He writes off like 0.002% because we have a strategy that, yes, we appreciate you as a client, but we're going to do these things to get our cash because cash is the oxygen of the business.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm all about customer service and making sure you maintain and build really, really strong relationships with your clients. But a really strong relationship does not mean you get to violate our contract and pay me outside of our agreed upon payment terms. By maintaining a healthy relationship, I'm going to hold you accountable to the terms that we agreed to. That's part of having a healthy relationship.
I agree. And if it's going to cost you to have a client, is it really worth it?
Right. Exactly. Well, and here's the other thing. We're talking about risk with our clients all the time too. So if we've got a customer that consistently pays us 90 days late, well, guess what? That means 90 days, we're going to treat that like 90 days of having to tap into a line of credit to cover that cost. And we're going to price the cost of 90 days of line of credit on that delayed payment into their bids from now on.
It's part of the job costing.
Yeah, exactly. You want to pay us late, that's okay. But we're not going to eat the cost of that. You are.
Yeah, I agree. So tell me about some of the services that Cruzumi offers.
Yeah, we're kind of a one-trick pony. We do fractional CFO and only fractional CFO. We don't do bookkeeping. We don't do tax returns. We don't do tax planning. We're not your tax people. We are the CFO for your business. So we will come in. We'll do the budgets, the forecast, the projections. We'll drive the strategy conversations. We'll drive profitability. We'll drive cash flow. All the things that a real CFO should be doing in a business. That is what we do. We stay in our lane. We stay laser focused on what we're good at. And we help you make sure you've got good people in place for everything else.
And so from a legal perspective, the construction industry works like no other. Is it the same from an accounting perspective?
The accounting for the construction industry is a little unique. Yeah, there's a lot of fractional CFOs like myself who they'll literally say, like even on their website sometimes, we're the fractional CFO for everything except construction.
Yeah. At least they're honest.
Yeah, like they won't touch it. They don't want to do it because they know it's different. They know they don't understand it. And if you don't have construction experience and you don't understand the industry, you're not going to be able to help or add value at the level that you need to be able to. So for sure, if you're in the construction industry and you're looking at fractional CFOs, there's a few of us out there who specialize in doing CFO services for construction companies. And that's who you want to be picking from.
I agree. And it's the same thing like an attorney, you want somebody specialized in construction. It just, in my opinion, it's just in the business world, it just runs differently than a type of it. It's still there's a lot of parts of it that are the same, but it's just a different industry, the way it works, the way it pays, the way contracts work. It's just different.
Yeah, it is. So if you're interviewing a fractional CFO and you ask them to describe bonding to you and they start talking about glue, run for the hills.
You got the wrong company.
You got the wrong person. Yeah.
All right. So if people want to find more about Cruzumi, where would they go?
Our website, cruzumi.com, is a good resource. Second best option is probably LinkedIn. Look me up on LinkedIn, Luke Boyenger. I post every day on LinkedIn, financial educational materials for the construction industry. Very active. So if you message me on LinkedIn, I will respond pretty quickly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.